Commander Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship looked nothing like the sleek alien vessels that filled the space around Nexus Prime Station. The Defiant was big and blocky, with thick armor plates covering its hull. Weapon pods stuck out from its sides like metal thorns. To anyone looking at it, the ship seemed old and crude. But Jake knew better. He had helped design this ship. Every ugly plate and awkward weapon mount had a purpose. The aliens would learn that soon enough. The communication screen lit up with an incoming message. Commander Harrison, please report to Docking Bay 7. The diplomatic meeting is about to begin. Jake straightened his uniform and headed for the shuttle bay. Ambassador Lisa Morgan was already waiting for him, along with Admiral Carl Peterson. Lisa looked nervous as she checked her notes one more time. This meeting would decide humanity's future in the galaxy. Remember, Admiral Peterson said quietly, let them talk. Let them show us what they really think of us. We need to know what we're dealing with. The shuttle ride to Nexus Prime was short but tense. The station was huge, built by a dozen different alien races working together. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its many ports. But none of them looked like the Defiant. Human engineering was different. Human thinking was different. The meeting room was large and cold. Representatives from 20 different species sat around a curved table. At the head of the table sat the Zephyrian delegation. Their leader, Supreme Admiral Vex Ithari, was tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. His species had ruled a large part of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Ambassador Morgan took her seat and smiled politely. Thank you all for meeting with us today. Humanity is honored to request membership in the Galactic Coalition. Admiral Vexthari looked at her with what might have been amusement. Yes, the humans. We have heard about your interesting attempt at building a warship. A hologram of the Defiant appeared above the table. Several alien representatives made sounds that Jake guessed were laughter. The ship looked even more awkward in the hologram, spinning slowly so everyone could see all its ugly angles. This is your pride and joy? Asked another Zephyrian officer. It looks like something a child built from scrap metal. More laughter filled the room. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but Admiral Peterson placed a hand on his arm. Wait, the Admiral's eyes said. Let them talk. Your weapons are particularly amusing, Vexthari continued. Kinetic projectiles. How wonderfully primitive. Our energy shields have not been threatened by such crude weapons in centuries. The alien pointed to the weapon pods on the hologram. And these mounting points, so exposed, so vulnerable. One plasma blast would remove them entirely. Ambassador, Morgan kept her smile, though Jake could see it was getting harder. Perhaps our approach is different from yours, but we believe it has merit. Different? Vexithari stood up, his 4 arms spreading wide. My dear human, there is no different. In space warfare, there is advanced and there is primitive. Your ship represents the latter. A reptilian alien from the Corvash Confederation leaned forward. The hull design alone shows your lack of understanding. Why make it so thick and heavy? Speed and maneuverability, win battles, not bulk. Because humans do not understand energy dynamics, said a crystalline being whose species Jake did not recognize. They still think like creatures fighting with rocks and sticks. The insults continued for another 10 minutes. Every aspect of the Defiant was mocked. Its engines were too loud. Its armor was too heavy. Its weapons were too simple. Its design was too crude. The aliens seemed to be having a contest to see who could make the most cutting remarks about human technology. Through it all, Admiral Peterson sat quietly, taking notes. Jake wanted to defend their ship, to explain why they had built it the way they had, but he followed the Admiral's lead and stayed silent. Finally, Vexithari called for order. Enough entertainment for now. Let us discuss the real matter at hand. He turned to Ambassador Morgan with a look of false kindness. Humanity, your species is young, and clearly lacks the knowledge needed to survive in civilized space. Therefore, the Zephyrian Empire offers you protection. Protection? Lisa asked carefully. Yes, you will become a client state of our empire. We will defend your world from threats you cannot possibly handle. In return, you will provide us with resources and follow our guidance in all matters of importance." The room went quiet. Jake felt his heart beating faster. This was not membership in the coalition. This was surrender. Ambassador Morgan's smile finally disappeared. "I appreciate the offer, Admiral, but humanity prefers to remain independent." Vexathari's expression changed instantly. The false kindness vanished, replaced by cold anger. "You refuse our generous protection?" "We respectfully decline," Lisa said firmly. The alien admiral stood up again, this time looking much more threatening. "Then you refuse the only chance for your species to survive. Very well. Perhaps when your pathetic warship is debris floating in space, you will reconsider." He gestured to his delegation, and they all rose to leave. But before walking out, Vexathari turned back one more time. "Commander Harrison," he said, somehow knowing Jake's name without being introduced. "I look forward to meeting your Defiant in battle. It will be amusing to watch it die." The Zephyrians left the room, followed by most of the other alien delegations. Within minutes, only the humans remained at the large table. Admiral Peterson finally spoke. "Well, that went about as expected." "They really think we're primitive," Lisa said, shaking her head. Jake looked at the hologram of his ship, still spinning slowly above the table. "Maybe that's exactly what we want them to think." The Admiral smiled grimly. "Get back to the Defiant, Commander. I have a feeling you're going to be very busy very soon." As they left the meeting room, Jake thought about all the things the aliens had not seen in their examination of his ship. They had looked at the surface and seen crude weapons and ugly armor. They had not seen the quantum processors hidden inside the hull. They had not seen the adaptive AI systems that could learn and change during battle. They had not seen the real innovations that made the Defiant special. The aliens thought humans were primitive because they fought differently. Soon, they would learn that different could be very dangerous indeed. 3 weeks had passed since the meeting at Nexus Prime. Captain Amy Rodriguez sat in her command chair aboard the Defiant, reading the mission orders that had just arrived from Earth Command. The message was simple and direct, but something about it felt wrong. "Lieutenant Tucker," she called to her intelligence officer, "come take a look at this." Ben Tucker moved from his station to stand beside the captain's chair. He was young for an intelligence officer, but he had good instincts. Amy trusted those instincts. "Routine patrol of the Kepler 442 system," Ben read aloud. "Standard reconnaissance mission. Report any unusual activity." He frowned. "That's a long way from Earth for a routine patrol." "My thoughts exactly," Amy said. "Why send our only prototype warship to the outer rim for a simple patrol? We have regular scouts for that kind of work." Ben pulled up a star chart on his tablet. The Kepler 442 system was indeed far from Earth, near the edge of explored space. It was also uncomfortably close to Zephyrian territory. "Captain, I need to check something," Ben said. "Give me an hour to dig through our intelligence files." Amy nodded and Ben hurried back to his station. She had learned to trust her crew's expertise. If Ben thought something was suspicious, it probably was. Down in the engine room, Chief Tony Walsh was having problems of his own. The Defiant systems were more complex than anything humans had ever built before. They combined Earth technology with alien components that had been carefully studied and reverse-engineered. Making it all work together was like solving a puzzle. That kept changing. "The quantum processors are running hot again," his assistant engineer reported. "Should I shut them down?" "No," Tony said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We need them online. The whole ship depends on those processors. Just increase the cooling flow and keep monitoring the temperature." The quantum processors were one of the Defiant's most important secrets. They allowed the ship's systems to adapt and learn during combat. No other species had figured out how to make quantum computers work reliably on a starship. Most aliens thought it was impossible, but humans had always been good at making impossible things work. Tony moved to another console where Dr. Helen Carter was running tests on their most secret weapon, the quantum disruption field generator, looked like a simple metal box, but it could interfere with any energy-based system within several thousand kilometers. "How are the field tests going?" Tony asked. Helen looked up from her work. "Good and bad. The good news is that it works exactly as designed. The bad news is that it uses enormous amounts of power. We can only run it for a few minutes before the ship's main reactor starts to overload." "A few minutes might be enough," Tony said thoughtfully, "especially if we use it at the right moment." "That's what I'm hoping. But Tony, this thing has never been tested in real combat. We're working from theory and computer simulations. What if something goes wrong?" Tony shrugged. "Then we fix it. That's what humans do. We make things work, even when they shouldn't." Back on the bridge, Ben Tucker had finished his research. What he found made his stomach feel cold. "Captain," he said quietly, "we need to talk privately." Amy followed him to her ready room, a small office just off the main bridge. Ben closed the door and activated a privacy screen that would prevent anyone from overhearing their conversation. "It's a trap," Ben said without any introduction. "Someone leaked our patrol route to the Zephyrians." Amy sat down heavily in her chair. "How do you know?" "I checked the communication logs from the past 3 weeks. Our patrol orders were sent through 6 different relay stations before reaching us. That's unusual. Normal orders go through 2 relays at most." Ben pulled up several data files on his tablet. "I also found encrypted transmissions being sent from 3 of those relay stations to known Zephyrian communication hubs. The timing matches perfectly with when our orders were processed. So they know exactly where we're going and when we'll be there," Amy said. "Yes, and there's more. Long-range sensors have detected a large Zephyrian fleet moving toward the Kepler 442 system, 12 ships, including several heavy cruisers." Amy stared at the tactical display Ben showed her. 12 enemy ships against 1 human vessel. The odds were not good, even with the Defiant's advanced systems. "We could request new orders," Ben suggested. "Ask for a different patrol route." Amy shook her head. "No. If we change course now, they'll know we detected the trap. They'll just set up another ambush somewhere else. So what do we do?" Amy was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally she smiled, but it was not a pleasant smile. "We spring the trap, but not the way they expect." She activated the ship's communication system. "All senior officers to the briefing room. We have a mission to plan." 20 minutes later, the Defiance department heads gathered around the briefing table. Amy had told them about the trap and the enemy fleet waiting for them. 12 ships, said Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker, the weapons officer. "That's a lot of firepower." "It is," Amy agreed. "But they're expecting to fight 1 scared human ship trying to run away. Instead, they're going to get something very different." She brought up a tactical display showing the Kepler 442 system. "The Zephyrians will position their fleet here near the 4th planet. It's the most logical place to intercept us when we drop out of hyperspace." "Logical for them," said Navigator Lieutenant Kate Adams. "But what if we don't drop out where they expect?" "Exactly," Amy said. "Kate, I want you to plot a course that brings us out of hyperspace right in the middle of their formation. Close enough to touch." The navigator's eyes went wide. "Captain, the risk of collision, I know the risks. But if we appear where they least expect us, we can cause chaos in their ranks before they can organize a proper attack." Dr. Carter leaned forward. "That would be the perfect time to use the quantum disruption field. If we're close enough, we could disable several of their ships at once." "My thoughts exactly," Amy said. "Steve, what's our weapon status?" "All kinetic cannons are loaded and ready," Parker reported. "Targeting systems are calibrated for close-range combat. If we can get in among them before they react, we can do serious damage." Tony Walsh raised his hand. "Captain, I should warn you. The ship's systems are still being modified. Some of our upgrades are untested in combat conditions." "Will they work?" Amy asked. "They should work, but there's always a chance." "There's always a chance with any new technology," Amy interrupted. "The difference is that human technology is designed to be fixed when it breaks. Alien technology just stops working." She looked around the table at her officers. "The Zephyrians think they're hunting a primitive human ship. They expect us to run, or to fight desperately from a distance. Instead, we're going to get close and hit them hard. It's risky, Ben Tucker said. Everything worth doing is risky, Amy replied. But I'd rather take our chances in a fight than let them destroy us without a battle. The meeting continued for another hour as they planned their attack. Every officer contributed ideas and suggestions. By the time they finished, they had a plan that was both simple and audacious. As the officers left to prepare their departments, Amy remained in the briefing room with her thoughts. In a few hours, they would jump to hyperspace and head for what everyone knew was an ambush. The smart thing would be to call for help or change course. But Amy had not joined the space service to do the smart thing. She had joined to explore the unknown and defend humanity. Sometimes that meant taking risks that others would call foolish. Yao. Zephyrians were about to learn that humans were full of surprises. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space like a pack of hunting wolves. 12 sleek warships formed a perfect crescent around the point where intelligence reports said the human ship would appear. Fleet Admiral Kepler stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Glory, watching the empty space where his prey would soon arrive. All ships report ready, Admiral, his communications officer announced. Plasma weapons are charged and targeting computers are locked on the emergence point. Kepler nodded with satisfaction. This would be quick and easy. One primitive human ship against 12 of the Empire's finest warships. The battle would be over in minutes, perhaps seconds. Remember, he broadcast to his fleet, we want wreckage to examine. Try not to vaporize the entire ship immediately. Several of his captains acknowledged with what sounded like amusement. They all thought this was going to be entertaining rather than challenging, but something went wrong with their perfect ambush. Instead of appearing at the predicted location, the human ship materialized directly in the center of their formation. The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace less than a kilometer from the Zephyrian flagship, so close that Kepler could see the details of its ugly hull through his main viewer. How did they... he began. But events moved too fast for questions. On the Defiance bridge, Captain Amy Rodriguez felt a moment of satisfaction as she saw the shocked expressions on alien faces through her screen. Her navigator, Lieutenant Kate Adams, had pulled off an impossible maneuver, bringing them out of hyperspace precisely where they needed to be. All weapons, fire at will, Amy ordered. Dr. Carter, activate the disruption field. The space around them exploded into chaos. The Defiant's kinetic cannons began firing tungsten rods at incredible speed. The projectiles were simple chunks of metal, but they hit with the force of small asteroids. The first target was a Zephyrian cruiser called the Stellar Wrath, positioned just 200 meters away. The tungsten rods punched through the alien ship's energy shields like they were not even there. The Zephyrians had never encountered weapons that could ignore their defensive systems. Their shields were designed to stop energy beams and plasma bolts, not solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker watched his targeting display with grim satisfaction. As the Stellar Wrath's hull began to rupture, atmosphere vented from multiple holes as the kinetic rounds tore through the ship's interior. Within seconds, the cruiser was listing badly and falling out of formation. Target destroyed, Parker reported. Moving to next target. But the Zephyrians were not helpless. Even shocked by the human ship's unexpected appearance, they began to return fire. Plasma beams lanced out from multiple ships, converging on the Defiant from all directions. The alien weapons should have melted the human ship instantly. Zephyrian plasma cannons were among the most powerful energy weapons in the galaxy. But something strange happened when the beams hit the Defiant's hull. Instead of burning through the armor, the plasma energy seemed to spread across the ship's surface and disappear. The quantum-enhanced armor that the aliens had mocked as primitive was actually absorbing their weapon fire and redirecting the energy harmlessly into space. Chief Tony Walsh monitored the energy absorption systems from his engineering station. Armor is holding perfectly, he reported to the bridge. The quantum matrix is distributing the plasma energy across the entire hull. As long as they don't concentrate fire on one spot, we can take everything they throw at us. Dr. Helen Carter activated the quantum disruption field, and immediately 3 Zephyrian ships began having problems. Their weapon systems started misfiring. Their engines began stuttering and their shield generators flickered on and off randomly. "What is happening to our ships?" Admiral Kethmore demanded, but none of his officers could give him an answer. They had never seen anything like this before. The disruption field was interfering with the quantum processors that controlled most alien technology. Unlike human systems, which were designed to work even when damaged, Zephyrian technology depended on everything functioning perfectly. When the quantum field disrupted their delicate systems, the ships became nearly helpless. Lieutenant Kate Adams spun the Defiant through the enemy formation like a dancer, using the ship's superior maneuverability to avoid concentrated fire. The human vessel was smaller and more agile than the Zephyrian cruisers, able to change direction quickly while maintaining accurate fire. "Two more targets locked," Parker announced. Firing kinetic spread. A second Zephyrian ship, the Knight's Edge, took multiple hits along its engine section. The tungsten rods shattered the ship's reactor containment, causing a series of internal explosions that tore the vessel apart from the inside. The Defiant's adaptive AI systems were learning from each exchange of fire. Every time the Zephyrians tried a new attack pattern, the human ship's computers analyzed it and developed a counter-response. Within minutes, the AI was predicting enemy moves before they happened. "Their plasma cannons have a 2-second charging cycle," the AI reported to Parker. "Recommend evasive pattern Delta 7 to avoid incoming fire." Kate Adams adjusted the ship's course based on the AI's predictions, sliding past 3 plasma beams by centimeters. The Zephyrians were firing at where the human ship had been, not where it was going to be. Admiral Kethmore watched in growing horror as a third ship, the Void Striker, suffered critical damage to its weapon systems. The human ship seemed to anticipate every move his fleet made. Worse, their weapons were doing terrible damage while his own plasma cannon seemed nearly useless against the primitive-looking armor. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," he ordered. "Ignore everything else and destroy that ship." But concentrating their fire meant moving into closer formation, which played directly into human hands. The tighter the Zephyrian ships grouped together, the more effective the Defiant's area weapons became. Dr. Carter overloaded the quantum disruption field, creating a massive pulse that disabled 4 ships simultaneously. The energy surge burned out several of the Defiant's own systems, but the damage to the enemy was devastating. "Field generator is offline," Carter reported, "but we got them good." 2 more Zephyrian cruisers, the Star Piercer and the Cosmic Blade, collided when their navigation systems failed at the same time. The impact destroyed both ships in a spectacular explosion that lit up the entire battlefield. Parker targeted the disabled ships with precision strikes, his kinetic rounds finding weak points in their armor and cutting through vital systems. The Zephyrian vessels had been designed to fight energy-based weapons, not solid projectiles that could punch through any defense. In less than 10 minutes, the battle was over. 4 Zephyrian ships were completely destroyed, 3 more were crippled and drifting helplessly, and the remaining 5 were retreating as fast as their engines could carry them. The Defiant had suffered only minor damage. A few armor plates were scorched by plasma fire, and some secondary systems needed repair, but the ship was still fully combat capable. Admiral Kethmore stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His mighty fleet had been defeated by a single human ship that looked like it had been built in a scrapyard. Everything he thought he knew about warfare had just been proven wrong. "Signal retreat," he ordered quietly. All ships returned to base immediately. As the surviving Zephyrian vessels limped away, Captain Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. The first test of human military technology had been a complete success. The aliens had learned that primitive and effective were not the same thing. "Set course for home," she ordered, "and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Defiant is ready for anything they want to throw at us." The news of the Defiant's victory spread through Zephyrian space like wildfire. On the capital world of Zephyria Prime, Emperor Zalthek sat on his crystal throne, listening to Admiral Kethmore's report with growing fury. "You are telling me that one human ship destroyed 4 of our cruisers?" The Emperor's voice was dangerously quiet. "4 of our finest warships, defeated by primitives?" Kethmore knelt before the throne, his forearms spread in submission. Your Majesty, their technology is not what we expected. Their weapons ignore our shields completely, and their ship seems to adapt to our tactics in real time. Excuses, Zalthek hissed. You had 12 ships against one enemy vessel. There is no excuse for such failure. The Emperor stood up from his throne, his tall frame casting a shadow over the kneeling admiral. Summon Admiral Vexathari. It is time to deploy the apocalypse. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Carl Peterson stood in the war room at Fleet Command, reading reports from across human space. The victory at Kepler 442 had bought them time, but not much. Intelligence sources reported massive Zephyrian fleet movements throughout their territory. They're pulling ships from every sector, General Martha Collins said, as she joined Peterson at the holographic display. Whatever they're planning, it's big. Peterson nodded grimly. The Defiant proved our technology works, but one ship can't fight an entire empire. How many more prototypes can we have ready in the next 6 months? 3, maybe 4 if we push the construction crews to their limits. But Admiral, even 5 ships like the Defiant won't be enough if they bring their full fleet against us. The Admiral studied the star charts showing Zephyrian territory. Then we don't fight their full fleet. We make them spread out, chase shadows, waste resources on the wrong targets. In deep space, the Defiant was already putting this strategy into action. Captain Amy Rodriguez had volunteered for the most dangerous mission possible, taking the fight directly into enemy territory. Her ship moved through Zephyrian space like a ghost, striking supply convoys and isolated outposts before disappearing again. Commander Jake Harrison led a boarding party onto a captured Zephyrian transport ship. The alien crew had surrendered quickly when they realized their weapons could not penetrate human combat armor. What kind of supplies are they carrying? Amy asked over the communication link. Jake examined the cargo manifests on his tablet. Quantum processors, shield generators, and what looks like advanced targeting systems. This stuff is heading for their main fleet base. Not anymore, Amy said with satisfaction. Dr. Carter, what can you learn from those processors? Helen Carter was already examining one of the alien devices. These are more advanced than what we captured before. If I can reverse engineer them, we might be able to improve our own systems significantly. The Defiant's raids were having effects beyond just the military damage. Word was spreading throughout Zephyrian space that the mighty Empire could not protect its own shipping lanes. Client species that had been forced into submission began to wonder if the time for rebellion had come. On the mining world of Karak 7, the local governor received another report of human attacks. The third convoy this week, he muttered to his aide. How is one ship doing this much damage? Perhaps the humans have more ships than we thought, the aide suggested. Or perhaps our intelligence was completely wrong about their capabilities. The governor looked out his window at the alien workers in the mines below. They had been quiet lately, but he could sense their growing restlessness. Double the guard patrols, and send a message to Fleet Command. We need more protection. Similar messages were flooding in from across the Empire. Every sector commander was demanding additional ships for defense. Resources that should have been concentrated for the attack on Earth were instead being scattered across hundreds of worlds. Agent Ryan Murphy moved carefully through the shadows on the Zephyrian space station. The human intelligence operative had spent months establishing his cover identity as a traitor from the Outer Rim. Now that cover was paying off as he gathered crucial information about enemy fleet movements. The datapad he carried contained details of the Empire's most secret project. The dreadnought Apocalypse was nearing completion in the hidden shipyards of the Vortex Nebula. When finished, it would be the largest warship ever built, capable of destroying entire planets. Ryan transmitted the data in a burst transmission to a relay satellite, then destroyed his equipment. His mission was complete, but getting off the station alive would be another challenge entirely. Back on the Defiant, the crew was feeling the strain of constant combat. They had been behind enemy lines for 2 months, fighting almost every day. But their efforts were working. Intelligence reports showed that Zephyrian fleet strength was being diverted from the planned Earth invasion to defend their own territory. We're making them react instead of act, Amy told her senior officers. During their daily briefing, every ship they send to hunt us is one less ship they can use against Earth. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker looked tired but determined. The kinetic cannons are holding up well, but we're running low on tungsten rounds. We'll need to find a supply source soon. There's a Zephyrian ammunition depot in the Rigel system, Ben Tucker reported. Lightly defended, mostly automated. We could raid it for raw materials. Amy nodded. Plot a course. But first, Dr. Carter, what's the status on those captured quantum processors? Helen looked up from her workstation. I figured out how they work. The Zephyrians use a completely different approach to quantum computing than we do. Their systems are more powerful, but also more fragile. If we can combine their processing power with our adaptive design, we get the best of both technologies, Amy finished. How long do you need? Give me 3 days and I can have a prototype ready for testing. The modifications Dr. Carter developed would prove crucial in the battles to come. By combining human adaptability with alien processing power, the Defiant systems became even more effective at countering enemy tactics, but the Zephyrians were adapting too. Deep in the Vortex Nebula, work on the Apocalypse proceeded around the clock. Emperor Zalthek had ordered the project's completion accelerated, regardless of cost. Admiral Vexithari supervised the final installations personally. How long until the main weapon is operational? He asked the chief engineer. 2 weeks, Admiral. The planet killer cannon requires precise calibration of 17 separate focusing crystals. You have 1 week, Vexithari said coldly. The Emperor grows impatient, and I will not be the one to tell him we need more time. The engineer bowed nervously. Yes, Admiral. We will work faster. As the Apocalypse neared completion, other parts of the Empire were falling apart. 3 client species had declared independence in the past month. Zephyrian troops were being withdrawn from frontier worlds to protect the core systems. Trade, routes that had operated safely for centuries, were now dangerous due to human raids and alien rebellions. On Earth, Admiral Peterson watched the intelligence reports with growing hope. They're overextending themselves, he told General Collins, trying to be strong everywhere but ending up weak everywhere instead. It's working, Martha agreed. But our sources say they're building something big in the Vortex Nebula. If they complete that project, then we make sure they don't complete it, Peterson said firmly. Contact Captain Rodriguez. It's time for the Defiant to pay a visit to that nebula. The message reached the Defiant as it finished its raid on the ammunition depot. Amy read the new orders with a mixture of excitement and concern. The Vortex Nebula was heavily defended and intelligence about the target was limited, but the mission could end the war before the Zephyrians could bring their full power to bear against Earth. It was worth the risk. All hands prepare for hyperspace jump, Amy announced over the ship's communication system. We're going deep into enemy territory for our biggest mission yet. The Defiant turned toward the Vortex Nebula, carrying humanity's hopes into the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. The Vortex Nebula was a swirling mass of purple and gold gas clouds that stretched across 3 star systems. Hidden deep within its center was the most secret shipyard in the Zephyrian Empire. And at that shipyard, the dreadnought Apocalypse waited like a sleeping giant. Captain Amy Rodriguez studied the massive ship through the Defiant's sensors. The Apocalypse was 10 times larger than her vessel, bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire fleets. Its armor was thicker than most ship hulls, and its shields could probably stop anything the galaxy could throw at it. That thing is enormous, Lieutenant Kate Adams whispered from her navigation station. Size isn't everything, Amy replied, though she felt a chill looking at the alien dreadnought. Remember, they probably thought the same thing about our ship. Emperor Zalthek himself commanded the Apocalypse from its massive bridge. He had come personally to oversee the destruction of the troublesome human vessel. No primitive ship would escape him twice. All weapons charged and ready, Your Majesty, Admiral Vexithari reported. The planet killer cannon is prepared for immediate firing. Zalthek stared at the small human ship on his main screen. It looked even more pathetic next to his mighty dreadnought. Good. I will personally watch this vermin die. The battle began when the Apocalypse opened fire with its main weapons. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced out toward the Defiant. Amy felt her ship shake as the first wave of fire struck their shields. Armor holding, Chief Tony Walsh reported from engineering. But barely. Those weapons are incredibly powerful. Dr. Carter, can we use the disruption field against something that big? Amy asked. Helen Carter shook her head. The Apocalypse is too large and too well shielded. Our field generator would burn out before it could affect their main systems. More weapons fire erupted from the dreadnought. The Defiant twisted and rolled, using its superior speed to avoid the worst of the bombardment. But there was nowhere to run in the confined space of the nebula, and the enemy ship's weapons seemed to fill every possible escape route. Hull breach on Deck 7, damage control reported. Emergency containment fields holding. Amy knew they could not win a direct fight against such overwhelming firepower. The Defiant was tough, but it was not invincible. She needed a different approach, something the Zephyrians would not expect. Tony, what would happen if we synchronized our quantum processors with their reactor core? She asked suddenly. The chief engineer looked confused. Captain, that's incredibly dangerous. If the frequencies match wrong, both ships could explode. But if they match right? Tony thought for a moment. If we could create a resonance cascade in their power systems, yes, it might work. But the timing would have to be perfect. Dr. Carter overheard the conversation from her station. I can modify the disruption field generator to create a quantum resonance beam. But I'll need to scan their reactor signature. First, do it, Amy ordered. Kate, get us closer to that monster. The navigator's eyes went wide. Closer. Captain, they're already shooting at us with everything they have. Then we'll have to be faster than everything they have. The Defiant accelerated directly toward the Apocalypse, dodging between energy beams and plasma bolts. The alien gunners could not believe what they were seeing. No sane captain would fly directly at a dreadnought. But Amy Rodriguez was counting on human unpredictability. While the Zephyrians tried to understand her tactics, she was getting close enough for Dr. Carter to scan their reactor. Got it, Helen announced. Their power core uses a quantum singularity contained by magnetic fields. If I can destabilize the containment... How long do you need? Amy asked as another energy beam nearly clipped their port wing. 2 minutes for the modifications, then another minute to charge the resonance beam. You have it. Amy switched to the ship-wide communication system. All hands prepare for emergency maneuvers. We're about to try something that's never been attempted before. On the Apocalypse, Emperor Zalthek was growing frustrated. The human ship should have been destroyed by now. Instead, it continued to dance around his weapons fire like a small bird avoiding a giant predator. Why is it not dead yet? He demanded. The ship is faster than our targeting computers predicted, Vexathari admitted, and their pilot seems to anticipate our firing patterns. Then stop trying to be precise. Fill the entire area with weapons fire. Destroy everything. The Apocalypse unleashed its full arsenal. Hundreds of energy beams, plasma bolts, and missile. Warheads filled the space around the Defiant. There was no way any ship could survive such concentrated firepower, but the Defiant's adaptive AI systems had been learning throughout the battle. Every weapon the Zephyrians fired was analyzed and cataloged. The computer could now predict where every shot would go before the aliens even pulled the trigger. Evasive pattern Omega, the AI announced to Kate Adams. Probability of survival, 73%. Kate followed the computer's guidance, steering the ship through gaps in the weapons fire that seemed impossibly small. Energy beams passed centimeters from the hull as the Defiant wove through the deadly maze. Resonance beam ready, Dr. Carter announced. Amy took a deep breath. Fire. The modified disruption field generator sent an invisible pulse of quantum energy toward the Apocalypse. The beam was too weak to damage the dreadnought's armor or shields, but it was not aimed at them. Instead, it penetrated deep into the ship's core, where the quantum singularity that powered the massive vessel was contained. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Apocalypse began to shudder. What is happening? Emperor Zalthek shouted as his ship shook around him. The reactor containment field is destabilizing, his chief engineer reported in panic. The quantum singularity is beginning to collapse. The collapse of a quantum singularity was not an explosion in the normal sense. Instead, it was a cascade failure that spread through every system connected to the reactor. The apocalypse's weapons went offline first, then its shields, then its engines. Within minutes, the most powerful warship in the galaxy was a dead hulk drifting in space. But Amy was not finished. Even as the apocalypse died, new contacts appeared on the Defiant's sensors. The Earth fleet had arrived, led by Admiral Carl Peterson himself. "Sorry we're late," Peterson's voice came over the communication system. "We brought some friends." Behind the Earthships came vessels flying the flags of a dozen different species: the Corvash Confederation, the crystal beings of Zarian, and many others who had suffered under Zephyrian rule. The destruction of the apocalypse had been broadcast throughout the galaxy, and the Empire's enemies had finally found the courage to act. Emperor Zalthek watched from his crippled flagship as rebellion erupted across his territory. World after world declared independence. Fleet after fleet defected to join the growing alliance against Zephyrian rule. In the space of a single day, a 1,000-year empire crumbled into dust. "Your Majesty," Admiral Vexathari said quietly, "we should surrender while we still can." Zalthek stared at the small human ship that had started it all. The Defiant looked as crude and ugly as ever, but he now understood that appearances could be deceiving. "Signal our surrender," he said finally. "The war is over." 6 months later, Commander Jake Harrison, now promoted to Admiral, stood on the observation deck of Nexus Prime Station. Where once there had been only alien ships, now human vessels moved freely among vessels from dozens of species. The galaxy had learned that being different was not the same as being primitive. Humanity's approach to technology and warfare had seemed crude to species that relied on energy and elegance. But crude could be effective, and effective was what mattered in the end. The Defiant hung in space near the station, no longer alone. Around it floated the growing human fleet, each ship incorporating lessons learned from that first desperate battle. But the original prototype remained special, a reminder that sometimes the best solution was the one nobody expected. "Admiral," Harrison smiled as he watched a group of young alien engineers studying the human ships. They were trying to understand how primitive technology had defeated the most advanced empire in the galaxy. The answer was simple, though it would take them years to learn it. Humans did not just build machines. They built machines that could think, adapt, and overcome any challenge, and that made all the difference.